está com o Russ Abrams, VP de operações do US Bank e Lean Master e Six Sigma Master Black Belt com larga experiência. Ele vai nos trazer aí vários assuntos relacionados a processo de inteligência artificial. Fique com a gente. Deixar a palavra com o Abrams. Abrams, you can go ahead with your presentation. You can go and bring the presentation right now. Let's get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Gemba. It's great to be back. I am so happy. Well, let me make sure I'm presenting clearly here.
Yes, that's okay.
Oh, terrific. I am so happy to be here today with all of you, and I'm super excited to tell you about some new tools and how we can use these tools to excel our own skills and knowledge on Lean and Six Sigma. My son helped me with the presentation when I first started. He said it was too boring, Dad. You gotta spice it up. So
Good.
I wanted to kind of spice it up, make sure everyone sees this. So throughout history, humans have consistently developed tools that have allowed them to go beyond their physical capabilities. From creating a sword for defense to farm equipment for farming. The digital age now allows us to go beyond our own cognitive abilities, whether it's performing massive amount of calculations or just on the internet instead of looking throughout the library for books. All that information is right in our hands. So while people may be hesitant and nervous about AI, we should start to feel empowered about it. It's really the next step of evolution as we continue this process. So listen, we are creators, the doers, the one who can see an issue and know how to fix it by correcting the problem. We take the situation and the complexities and we tell stories with the data. We use our tools, standard approaches to inventory, waste, defect reduction, and identifying who is our customer, what they need, and when our customer is happy and when they're not. It would take me pages of PowerPoints and times to assemble your A9, A6, whatever, A8. But now I can tell the story in just a few seconds, coordinating it and using the data to tell the story using Power BI, as well as the other tools I'm going to go through. So my fellow practitioners, look, I've been practicing Lean for over 20 years. And most of my transformations were in technology and telecommunication-based businesses. But I love helping people through process issues. Most recently, I helped someone who had it was not easy to work with. And when we transformed the business and the process, she was a lot nicer to work with. So we not only transform businesses, but we also transform people. And I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of various great practitioners over the years. And I learned little pieces from each of them. How to lead the best tricks for leading a Kaizen event, taking a waste walk, approaching to how we analyze and communicate with others. So these principles I want to make sure are proven and timeless, but the activities and steps are not. So I want to take a moment with kind of ask the audience here, anyone who can chat away. How long is it taking you to do Six Sigma projects today? On a good day, on a bad day, on a good project, bad project, what's the feedback? And if you can help me what you see in the chat and what's coming through for some Lean, even Kaizen events, have we shortened the time period? How's our response? I can't see actually the chat. So if any of you can help me out here, Gustavo, on who's responding here, and what the times are.
Don't have these either. You can proceed.
Oh, okay. Well, I started with paper processes, then Visio and calculator, and then Minitab. Used to say Morse code was great until they came up with the telephone. So it's really the next technology that makes it easier and faster to implement. So and it continues to evolve. So what I'm going to go through here today is go into how process mining is really the next tool in our toolkit, and also take a look at the Power Platform and App Solutions and how it works. Now, I don't want this to sound like it's a commercial for Microsoft. I'm not paid for them by any means, but I wanted to also emphasize other tools that I've used in the past, and also just great tools. So I thought Google Docs was like the best thing. I could collect data on a phone, on a tablet, web browser with Google Forms, and then move the data directly into Google Sheets and perform analysis. So it was a great source for other future forms as well. So with some other clients, I built a lot of, one of the things that's great about Google Forms is that it's free for nonprofits, and it is very cheap for startups. So it kind of puts itself into that sweet spot. So look, free for nonprofits, you shouldn't really go for anything else. Nothing really beats free. So I designed a project planning tool and an inventory management system for Habitat for Humanity. They actually create homes for those that are homeless, and they actually build them from scratch. And so there's a lot of inventory for what's needed, a lot of tasks, what needs to be done, and you're working with volunteers. So creating an app that says what steps the next, and everyone can use, as well as track the inventory, was key for them. We also created another app for those that were coming out of an orphanage and trying to basically establish themselves and have a lot of social quirks. So it took about 2 years of therapy, but being able to actually record their progress, we were able to actually reduce it down to 4 months. So all of this was just with using the forms. It's the same methodology, but now it's a Google suite. So it was nice. It was attractive. They did take a lot of coding, where the Power Platform doesn't have that. A lot of things is plug and play, and what they call is low code or no code. So Power Platform was really built for Lean Sigma in mind. It really allows you to rapidly develop apps and automation that saves you time. And there's actually thousands of flows built in already, which I didn't really find with the Google Drive. But again, free for nonprofits and affordable for startups. All right. Well, I always say that the Power Platform is like the Swiss Army knife of business solutions, except you can't cut rope or open a can of food, and doesn't come with a toothpick. But it is 100% data focused. So I want to kind of go over three tools, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with them, but we'll go through each one and then step into the process mining. So the first thing is to kind of manage your data. A lot of times we use spreadsheets and different things, but Power BI, you can put an entire project right in there. In fact, multiple projects. And Power Apps is a key place to build an app quickly for data collection, or even creating an instant solution where you can now share information with people instantly. Power Automate is a set of tasks that kick off automatically. It's, I think, terrific for when you're looking to control a process as well as part of a solution. All right. So there are 3 things in my life that I love: my son, my dog, and the third one is now Power Platform. So believe it or not, Power Platform, I kind of want to relate it to something we can all relate to is, or if you have kids, having kids. They're unpredictable little projects. And if you're like me, you probably wondered, is there a way I can apply Lean Sigma principles to parenting? Well, hold on to your diapers, because there's a tool called Power Platform. So picture this: bunch of kids, each one is like a process with its quirks and challenges. And now we've got our first hack at Power Apps. So with Power Apps, you can actually make an app that kind of controls, hey, I want to be able to track who's schedule, who do I have to pick up, who do I have to drop off, what time they have to eat. and you can basically build that into a Power App. Any app that will help you do your job to collect information or share it. Then there's Power Automate. That's the little guy over here, the arrow pointing to the right. This one's a game changer. This is automating the repetitive tasks. My God, every nighttime routine, over and over again. Do you brush your teeth? It's done. Power Automate triggers everything. It could trigger on a specific time frame. Or you picture or trigger after a certain event. So imagine that. No more arguing about when it's time for bed. Now we've got Power BI. That's like having a parenting data analyst. It takes all the chaos of parenting and it turns into easy to understand reports. You can see which kid's eating the most cookies, who's staying up past their bedtime, and even predict when you're going to run out of diapers. So it's your personal crystal ball process automation piece for supply chain. So now we have Power Virtual Agents. These are the chatbots. And I always think of a chatbot as so annoying. I want to talk to the agent. Well, these new chatbots that are coming out are using generative AI. So it's basically the ChatGPT, where these are chatbots you're going to want to talk to. We can add personalities to it. We can make them sarcastic. It can hook up to ChatGPT, make your personal parenting assistant, answer all those questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do babies come from? You know, it's a 24/7 kid-friendly Siri.
Russ,
So,
just a question. When we see the chatbots and the process automation and the subject around that, what is the biggest challenge that we have for doing this kind of application? Well, how do you see this?
The biggest challenge in using the tools?
Yes. How to link the things with the automation and make everything okay and working on that?
So those are connectors. Those are connectors. And really what you want to do is start out small and kind of build up from your connectors to pulling in that data. We're going to cover that. In fact, the process mining is a great way to kind of start things going with that. So, but like I said, so this, I'm just giving you a really high level, but we'll go into that to help you organize, automate, analyze, communicate better, just like what you want to do with your kids. So one of the easiest ways to start is kind of a form. This is where you talked about, like, if I start with nothing, okay, and I need a data collection piece, I can make a form with Power Apps. And there's actually an easy way to do that from a SharePoint site or from a source of information, or even from Excel where you wanted to capture that information. So this is where I would start. So by starting with an app, which is simple to build. If you remember Microsoft Access, where you used to make these forms and drop things into it, it's actually even easier than that. This is the kind of modern Access form where you can build and start pulling in that information. So it's click and drop. What I loved about it is when I think about the lean projects I did, and I had to set up a form for each cell. When we did that, the cost is astronomical to go to IT and say, wait a second, you need a different form for each cell? It's like, can't you just make these drop downs work with everyone else? But if I make one form that fits one person's job, now my drop downs and everything is tailored to them. They can fill it out in seconds. So we're now capturing that information, and it's taking us a very small amount of time to put more and more apps out together. A lot of times we try to put out one app to satisfy a large customer base, where in this situation, we can make customized ones. And that's really what speeds things up. And this is a great way to get started on it. Good question, Murphy. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Yes. Go ahead. We'll create more questions here.
Yeah, so this is another way. So I want people to really understand Power Automate, you know, and if you think about your process, right? basically a process is kicked off for some reason, whether it's you have an order from a customer, you have a request, or you even have a problem, right? We can actually work on what's called a trigger. It's actually going to trigger based on a start time, based on an inventory level, and then it's going to take certain actions. Whatever actions your process takes today that you want to continue, you can now put that into an automated step. So whether it's we have a low inventory, we hit the point of reorder, I got to put my request in for quotes, I got to send this out to here, I got to get approval for purchasing. That's done automatically. Okay, so then if there's a problem, we can actually start tracking this. This data from our problems actually feeds right back into our process, right back into our Power BI, and we can continue tracking it. The last one's kind of the logic piece. You know, what's going to determine something that's acceptable or something that's not acceptable? If someone says yes, if someone says no. So this is a great example. This is another place where, from a process, from a Power Automate perspective, where I would get started. I can't tell you how many times I go to an organization and there is this approval process constantly, whether it's approval for this or approval for that, or monthly they have to check inventory here, or yearly they've got to make sure that this is working correctly, and they have to go through this and get people to respond. Instead of a person emailing and emailing and emailing, trying to get a response, this will kick it off automatically. What's great about this process is it's already built in. You can actually pull it out as a template, answer the questions, and kick it off to run. So whether it's, you know, an approval, a renewal date, whatever the case may be, as long as we have our source, when something's going to expire, it's going to pull that information, it's going to send it to them, says, do you want to renew this? They don't respond within a certain period of time, we can escalate it, go to the manager, or send again. Again, it's all done by triggers. By the end of a few days, you have all your answers, or you have your problem child that you can deal with, but you haven't wasted someone's time dealing with it.
Russ,
So,
when you see this kind of situation, I'm looking flow here in your presentation. What is the best way to make this? What is the right tool? Sometimes we see only flows, sometimes we see big process maps. What is your recommendation when we work in this way to improve the process?
So, did you ever look at this deck beforehand? You're absolutely right. So, the first place to start out. No, it's okay. It's okay. The first place to start out, where I now do it, where I have changed, where I would literally, and I'm going to walk through again how I go through my approach, is I now start with the process mining. Just pull it all in. I used to do that. I always start with the data and I follow the data, and it was painful. It was a long process, but with the data, I could understand what's going on with the process, and then I go and I do my Gemba, and I'd see what's going on over here, why it's going on over here, what's happening here, and then the data would start making sense. But that handling the data, pulling the data, takes a lot of work. And a lot of times you go to an IT organization, you say, hey, can you give me the logs? You know, what the person did on those activities, what the machine did on those activities. They go, what? The logs? Oh, those, we don't look at those anymore. We stopped looking. So you go through this whole process, and what's great about this is it literally pulls in the data, and it's not just, there are other mining tools out there, but again, I'm emphasizing this one.
Perfect.
So when you look at that data and you go through it, one of the things I love about Power BI is that it actually kind of embeds everything. It's kind of like your co-pilot data analyst. Your entire project could be on a single dashboard. And, sorry. So, it's jumping slides here. So Power BI allows you to use those statistical tools and graphs all in one spot. And it really helps you kind of put all that data together. I want to emphasize one more thing before I jump into the steps of well, exactly what you asked before and answer your question, is what AI now offers. The AI fundamentals that are in there. The machine learning, if you haven't started using it, let me tell you something. It's something we've been doing as Lean Sigma practitioners for years. Y equals F of X. It learns the same way as our analysis on projects. We understand what's causing the root cause because we've done the analysis. It's basically showing, it's in teaching the system itself how to continue doing that machine learning, how to understand which X's are actually indicating and causing the, whether it's sales to go up, sales to happen, or outages to occur. I'll go over this kind of real quick on some times here but these are actually embedded capabilities. When I say really easy to use, it's very similar to like an app on your phone. And I really encourage everyone to kind of take a look at what's already out there, where you can take a picture of something. And if you train it on what image you want it to look at, it can then count all those images. If you have different documents that are coming to you, and you really care about different pieces within those documents, and you want to capture that and load it into a spreadsheet or load it into your database, it can do that. So there's also understanding where we have different tones. So if there's comments that are coming in from customers and they're not too happy, we can start making identification of why they're not happy and pick out certain pieces to understand they're not happy. We can tell by the tone, and we can understand what the context of that is. And these are just pieces that are also available as part of the integration. Okay, this is your question. No, Joe, this is exactly what I do.
Good.
This is what, when I go to an organization, I am constantly asking them, who are your customers? Buy the customer data. What are they buying? What are they returning? Which customers left you and why did they leave you? Who are your competitors? Where are they located? Where are their sales? Are they hiring? Are there job openings? Just really get an understanding of the ecosystem. Now I got social media data. I'm going to pull that in. What are the employee reviews? What's the Twitter, Facebook ads, Facebook complaints, Twitter complaints?
Russ?
Now I'm going to look at my products and services. What are my sales? What are my returns? Again, what are my complaints? And then I can do an analysis of my prices and my competitors' prices, taking this all offline. What do I use this for? I use it what's called the connectors. And the connectors, there's it's like hundreds. I think they're up to over 1,000 connectors, where you can say, look, I want to use a connector to connect to Salesforce. Boom. Now I'm pulling in the Salesforce data from my company.
Just a minute for a question. I'm sorry, but you were talking about the reference that we have for the customers. One of the main reference is the location, right?
Could be, right.
Is it still the best reference, or when we change it to the AI, to the fast delivery, and we had a change in the middle of the pandemic moment, do you see that it changed or it was kept after this bad moment, let's say?
Well, for who your competitors are?
Competitor and the system, because sometimes we see that the location is very important for the business, okay? And you will see in the most of the organizations, but we have a change in the pandemic moment, making the things more related to the internet, for example. And after the pandemic moment, what is the main reference when we see the customers? So
end customers, I could see what you're saying makes a lot of sense. If I'm a manufacturer and the location of where I am versus my supplier and the location of where I am versus my customers, from a pandemic perspective, it's now even more important because you can't get stuff internationally sometimes during the pandemic. But where I dealt with a lot of customers from a location perspective, and this is a fascinating business, is in cardboard boxes, right? So cardboard in and of itself is very cheap. And the further you drive in distance for delivery, it increases your cost. So manufacturing cardboard, you want to stay within the certain region of where your customers are, and build that supply chain. Because once you start traveling in certain aspects, that fuel cost weighs into it. But location from where your suppliers are, where your competitors' suppliers are, could definitely be an advantage to you. We always, and one of the basic things we always talk about in Lean is to be co-located with your suppliers. So when you look at where your competitors are and where the customer base is, being able to make that as close as possible. From a pandemic perspective too, there's so many things that came out of the pandemic, right? So lean inventory was a big piece in making sure that we have more on stock. But it really doesn't matter if the one's located next to you. But we also want to see this goes off the beaten trail, but we also want to see how long it's taking for shipments to arrive, right? So if I have a supply chain and the manufacturer or my supplier is starting to increase his delivery time and it's going up and we have those backlogs, we can always kind of track and understand where we may have to shift in what we're selling and dealing with. So that's also something else that would be a trigger here, is if our delivery times start going more and more, right? Because now it's no longer a trusted supplier. It now becomes a risk. So that would also be a trigger that would come up with this.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I could talk supply chain all day. So I also want to take this moment to kind of take our mindset from our basically our Ishikawa diagram, or our why because diagram, where we usually create our fish, where we have our problem statement at the end of it. And the way we usually build it is we have our problem at the end of our fish, the head of the fish. And what we're going to add to this is a line with the spine. We're going to call it time. Okay. So this is actually the time element of what exists in our data. Something that we can now use a lot Power BI for. And this allows us to break down our inventory by day, week, month, quarterly. So we can start looking at how things are coming through, time to complete, defects per segment of time. Now, you need to, for Power BI to work, you need to connect separate data elements. And we ask the why because in our traditional Ishikawa diagram, because we're trying to understand the elements that are factors in this. So as we ask the why, what we call this in Power BI is the dimension. So we're going to have our fact table. Our fact table is going to be maybe our orders, or everything that's completed, which would include our defects. It could also be sales, whatever you're looking at from a process perspective. And of course, sometimes we also have another dimension. Why? Because of those. And those are additional tables, but we're going to connect them. We can connect them by the attributes of our orders, which are all under the fact table. And as we continue to ask why, and we build out our different dimensions, we're building out our different tables. This should be very familiar to what we have. Now, the only thing different is that our time table can go into the future as well. And now we have Power Lean Sigma. This is how you build a sustainable Power BI model that allows you to really take in your entire organization. You have your fact table, your calendar table, You can see how many items are processed per week, day, how many items are in queue. Where is the queue forming? So our dimension table, very similar. I kind of use the coffee example. If you're selling coffee, dimension could be the type of bean, and then off of it could be how it was grounded, how long it was roasted for. So now we have our different dimensions going into basically what are attributes to our fact table. So this is kind of the foundation of how you build something in Power BI. What's amazing is that when we feed this information, Power Mining offers a streamlined way to visualize and analyze your process for optimization. So when I measure and map a process today, as fast as it's loaded, as I can load it up there into the cloud, is as quickly as it takes Power Mine to create a dashboard. The dashboard, the one I just walked you through of how to put it all together. If your data continues to feed in and you have it synced up there through a connector, you don't have to do anything. So what makes a successful process? All right, I want you to remember this. This is the pure success. When I provide someone an order, task, or product that was produced as I was told to make it, they like me. However, if I can present something to someone and I've made their life and job more manageable, less headache, stress, they love me. So with this process mining tool, I am in love. So let me point out a few things here. This is what's called the variance, and I'm going to kind of demo how we load everything in here. This is what's called the variance. What variants are is that there are actually 10 different ways to produce this process. This process was produced with 10, which means 10 different combination of factors to actually produce one particular order. Now, cases is how many were actually processed. And activities are the different steps that make up our different process steps that make up our variance. Now, the entire thing, everything we do, is to really understand what makes up different times. How does it work? What are the situations? This gives us that answer in minutes. So let me see the. So with the help of some movie magic, we can actually able to see how long it takes us to upload our data. So what I did here is I made up data so that we don't share any information we shouldn't. And so we have different cases, and within different cases we have different activities. Those activities are basically making a sandwich. And I used characters from Gilligan's Island. The virtual assistant will pop up and kind of guide you through it if you haven't done it before. And what it's doing now is it's understanding each activity, and this is very similar to a log file. You pull a log file from any piece of equipment, or who's accessing which piece of information through a help desk tool. We can pull that information out of it. We can even use email as well if you have an email process. So with Movie Magic, we're going to fast forward here, and we're going to look at our different activities, and we're going to actually see, it's creating our Power BI dashboard. And we're going to see our different activities and how long it took each of the processes to go through. You can see we have very few variations, and we can also take a look at the time. So I wanted to emphasize the speed here, because the speed is actually one of the things I think that really kind of sold it for me, as being able to map a process that fast. And now I can actually go through and really break it down, understand what's going on with my data, understanding which ones are taking the longest amount of time, where my rework is taking place, and how many steps that rework is occurring in. So I know where to start. And that's the biggest process step for me, is from right away, within a few minutes, I have everything I need. When we talk about the sword and the tools for farming, this is our sword. All of our processes are now created in a standardized format. I can standardize across the entire company. We can identify our top defects, our process step times with the longest lead times, and the most extensive backlog. The speed to automate and take action, especially with Copilot and ChatGPT assisting you in the office right next to you as it's answering questions, it's not even quantifiable how much of progress we make with this, and the return on investment is huge. And again, this is not an advertisement for Microsoft. There are other mining tools out there, but having this in place was just very powerful for me to see and use. So here are some additional benefits to the process mining piece. So, this is wait, there's more. So we can compare processes. I can look and see, okay, what did this person do? What was done here? Or I can actually create my own data and say, what if I fix this process by this amount of time? And I do like doing that with simulations because I can really stress test it without doing anything different. I can assess my process cost. I can see how long it's sitting in different steps and how much it's costing to process certain transactions. I can, again, do root cause analysis, breaking down my data and understanding why one variant of a process is taking longer than another, and what types of data are they using and what type of products are they using. I can assess my individuals, and it's always a sensitive topic to talk about, who's moving slow, who's moving faster, and again, simulations. So this is, when you ask that question, where would I start? I always start with those questions where I mentioned before. I want to understand the landscape. Now, within a few minutes, I can understand my data. With a few minutes of actually connecting to those connectors, where I showed previously in those slides, I can pull that data in just as fast and understand what's going on with their market. So these are our traditional ways. I kind of put this together. And I want you to think now, when you think, this is what I think for pandemic. I think the home working, and now we have the Power Lean Sigma. Before we would look at waiting time, and I see approvals, requests, cost, prices, and try to get that information where I was showing you before earlier. I can use Power Automate to kind of move along and make sure we're not waiting. How many people are involved in the process? More pieces of information I need here and there. I can use Power Apps, Power Automate, requesting that piece of information. Mistakes coming in, I could build my own app and prevent that. Motion, copy paste. This is that automation piece. And even Power BI, where I'm taking tons of information, putting it together, and automating tasks that people were doing because they were just trying to analyze data. And Power BI is doing it for you.
Russ, we have only more 10 minutes, okay? I would have one more question, but I will keep your presentation on, and in the end, I will make the questions. You can go ahead. Okay.
Well, basically, I want to just kind of finish up with one of the things that we're working on in financial institutions in the US. So this is some really cool stuff. And this was kind of the beginning question, what are you guys doing? Well, customer support calls. We're now transcribing conversations in real time. We can now detect if misinformation is being given to a customer. We can prompt auto responses based on what the customer has asked and how to deal with angry customers. We can now, with Power Automate, kick off a task. Oh, you need this process, you need this switch, we have to move this bank account to this bank account. Going to just hit a button. Done. AI generated mortgage approvals, really just taking all that information that a human would make a decision on and letting them make the decisions. Auto updating instructions and website. This is one of the things that's also very similar to chatbots you want to talk to. Understanding the questions that people are asking, learning from it, and auto updating our instructions. auto-updating our processes. So this is kind of something we're working on, is to identifying correct links and broken code. So if someone's following along on the website and the link doesn't work, we can detect it and before it actually occurs or when it occurs and automatically correct it. So when you think about your purchasing rate and click through, one of the things we look at is, okay, did they buy, right? But if they have a broken link, you got a 7% chance that they're going to buy. Most of the time they're going to leave. So one broken link will really cost you. So I want to kind of leave you with this, is that the future is managed by rules and algorithms. Knowing your data and how to understand those rules and how to change it is really going to be what the future is all about, as far as how we put processes in control, is making sure we have really good levers. I want to leave this for everyone else, where there's more information that's out there. It's on Microsoft Learn, or Learn Microsoft. This is where you can kind of learn about Power Platform, Azure AI, Power BI, and then finally, I just want you to make sure that you all stay ahead of your competitors and capture your customers. The ability and cost to automate tasks is coming down, but knowing who your customer is and why they like you and why they don't is essential to stay in business and grow. So keep your eyes on the trends and changes in the market. Always make sure that we relate those critical principles of the theory of constraints, 5S, just in time, SMED, to whatever you use, whether it's parenting or projects. And thank you for letting me speak here today.
Welcome, Russ. I will have two more questions here.
Sure.
The first one is related to the return of investment that you said before. Could you give us an example about this? I will invest some working time to make this kind of automation. And how is the benefit of this? Looking one piece only, if we work in a small piece of the system.
So let's take a look at what it would. So that's what I was kind of asking people to kind of time in and log into how long it took them for those projects, and how long it took them to capture that information, and how long it took them to process and create the process maps. So if we take your time in doing that, and I would say even a week's worth of time, 40 hours, the cost of the system, depending on a large organization like US Bank, would be about $4,000 per month, which when you think about US Bank, it's less than $50,000, and they have over 70,000 employees. So you can pay for it by each use at like $50, and your return on investment's through the roof if it's taking you a week to collect that data. So it's remarkable, and that's just the Microsoft version. There are other versions out there, and there are some that are even free for a week or free for a month, and it's incredible. It's incredible, the savings there. So
Okay.
the return on investment is, when you can do something in less than an hour, it costs you $50 versus thousands for the week.
Yes.
It's a no-brainer.
And the last question, how about the prioritization of the things that you are checking in the system to the process automation? Sometimes we see in the companies that they are trying to make the automation, but not in the right place, not in the right system, or not in the right process. What is the key of this choice, let's say?
So that's what Microsoft is calling the citizen developer, right? Because the cost of IT making a form and the backlog and everything else, you're putting in the hands of the user that needs that form. So the where they're investing their money in technology, that's a whole nother story. That's kind of a broad way to answer. But if we want immediate use and immediate feedback, just think about how Excel was when it came and was released, or a Word document when it was released. And people no longer had to type up a letter and then retype it, right? Because they could save it and just change out a name. Well, we gave that power to the individual who was making that document. And a lot of these tools and techniques are really given to the user to be able to make small changes to just improve their own processes and how they handle. I'm working with someone who's an executive assistant. She can right click and automatically set up a meeting with someone without trying to find, right times and everything else. She can right click and do most of the functionality of her job. And now she's able to work on higher level presentations, working with more data with me. But we can take most of her job and it's a right click. So it's pretty fascinating when you think about where we're investing that technology. And I really feel like empowering others and training others to make their own jobs and lives better is where I think we need to start investing now.
So I have one more, the last one, I promise,
Yeah.
right now. About the system that you mentioned, would you have another recommendation besides the power automation that you mentioned, or automate?
Mining tool?
Sorry?
Or
No, that makes the same that you spoke.
I mentioned the Google apps, and
Okay.
and I think that's pretty. There's Zapier. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It allows some really cool functionality between Google apps and some other functionalities, and it's just using APIs to kind of move that information. But again, it depends on your technical savviness. The Power Lean Sigma and the Power Platform really goes down to someone who can't code at all. And the new Copilot actually, it kind of works like ChatGPT. What do you want to do? You type it in, and it makes it for you. It makes your Power BI for you. It makes your flow for you. So there's nothing simpler out there right now. That's that simple. There's other ones,